Hey leaders, Alexander Thorg here with you today, and today I have a great guest, Angi Bell. She's great coach, consultant, trainer, speaker, and also she's from the same neighborhood as I am, from neighborhood of John C. Maxwell.
That's right. It's a good neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Angi.
How are you, Alexander? Good to see you.
Nice to see you too. So I just was inspired the other day when I just listened to John's speech, and he said that everything rises and falls on leadership. And somebody
Amen.
just asked him, John, but just tell me about how can I become more effective in my team? And he said, just read my lips. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So you need to learn how to lead people.
That's right.
Yeah. And that was very interesting because a lot of leaders, they do not understand leadership. They just understand management. Some of them, they do understand leadership, but they don't practice leadership. And that's why every single time when I have a chance to speak with the person who has a leadership position and we just discuss about leadership, and that person doesn't see leadership as I see, so that I bring to the person the book Five Levels of Leadership, because this is amazing book that just John written. And then when that person understand what leadership is, then we start our discussion.
Right. I think it's so powerful. You and I both love that book, and it's one of my favorites because I think for someone who is in a position of leadership, if they want to have a full grasp of what is possible, they need to move through those steps. And they are very clearly defined in the book. And I love the way John talks about the upsides and the downsides of each level, and then what you have to do to actually grow through those levels. And then he also includes which of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership apply to each of those levels. So it really, to me, is someone who really takes the five levels of leadership and works through them systematically and consistently. They're getting a PhD in leadership. It's like a manual, it's like a course on how to do it.
Yeah.
It's very clearly defined.
Yes.
And as you and I have discussed too in the past, it is very simple, but it is not easy. It's
Yeah.
not easy,
Yeah.
right? If it was, everybody would do it. And so most people that are invited into the leadership conversation because they're given a position of leadership, they think, oh, I'm a leader.
Yeah.
And that's not true. They are just invited into that conversation. It's where they take that conversation within themselves, with their higher ups and with their team, that's going to make all the difference on which level they rise to
Yes.
and how much fulfillment ultimately they have as a leader. And most importantly, you said it, how much influence, right? Because everything rises and falls on leadership, how much influence they're going to have with other people. As John says, leadership is influence,
Nothing more, nothing less.
nothing less. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And what interesting that John mentioned in this book is that leadership position just doesn't make you leader, but it gives you a great opportunity to learn how to become a better leader.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think maybe you have, I know I have in the past been given a position of leadership, that level one positional leadership. And it can kind of go different ways. Sometimes people think that's all there is. I'm the boss. I said it. And some people do understand that that's just the first step. That if people are following you because they have to, at some point, how much satisfaction are you going to have in that role? How much fulfillment and how much growth are you going to have? That's just the very bottom, rung of the ladder of leadership, if you will. That until they move on to level two, permission-based leadership, where people follow you because they want to,
Yeah.
that's certainly better than level one. But of course, those limitations are if you show up and you're having a bad day, they're not following.
Yeah.
So, I'm a self-proclaimed people pleaser, and I've worked really hard in the last 10 or 12 years to understand that pleasing people is nice, but it is not always effective. It's not always going to get things done. Leaders have to make difficult decisions. And so I certainly do still want people to like me. But again, if you're a leader and that's where you're stuck, you got to show up every day and be everybody's best friend, or else the job doesn't get done. So even level two is still really lower level leadership. Some people, based on their personality, get there and they think, now I've made it. Everybody likes me until they have a bad day,
Yes. Absolutely.
So then the challenge becomes, how do I get out of level two into level three as quickly as possible so I
Yes.
can be true to myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically nothing wrong to have leadership position because everyone has leadership position. Yes. No matter what leadership position is, or supervisor or vice president of huge corporation. But it
Right.
is leadership position, or maybe you're colonel or general, it's just rank. And
Yes.
if you lead people out of that rank or out of that position, people won't follow you. And this
That
is what John just repeat over and over again. And we just bring his message to other people. But so many people, they just don't buy into that message because they
Yeah,
they don't understand what leadership is. They
right.
just think that if they have a leadership position and they manage processes properly, they have good personality. Well, to be a good person and go to the church, it doesn't mean that you're a good leader,
That's right.
but you need to learn how to become a better leader. It's like John also mentioned in one of his speeches that when he was in the church, when he was in charge of ministry, and he said, well, I thought that if I will make people more excited, and because all of them they are so good, everybody come to the church, they just everybody pray, everybody just we laugh, we cry. But he said, I realized that if they'll be inspired, they won't be good leaders. They need to learn how to become better leaders.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's
I
very
love
good.
that. Leadership is one of those qualities. I think people know when they've experienced good leadership, and they can tell you when they've experienced bad leadership, but they may not be able to define it. One of the definitions I like is the ability to influence the thoughts, feelings, behaviors of another person for the greater good,
Yeah.
right? Because certainly people can have a negative influence on your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. That happens all the time. But that's not leadership, that's manipulation
Yes.
or coercion. And but when you can do that for the greater good, the good of that person and the organization as a whole, now you've got leadership. But I think people often confuse position with leadership.
Yes.
And like you said, anyone can be given a position. And in fact, all of us, I think, at some level are called into being leaders of ourselves, in our families, in our churches, in our communities, maybe in our work. But if everyone, I think, showed up to whatever role they're playing in that moment, and they said, I'm stepping into this as a leader, it would change the world.
Yeah.
Instead of they need to do something, they need to fix that, they should do this or they should do that. They're looking outside of themselves for somebody else to give them a solution. And if everyone owned that you're the leader of your life, then I think things would change. I'm not quite sure what the appeal is to not having that autonomy, not having that ownership of life. But in some workplaces, if there's not a culture of high level leadership, then people are taught that. The I've had jobs, when I was younger, where the boss said, your reward is your paycheck. So, you do your job, you get paid. There's nothing beyond that. And so, of course, those jobs were not fulfilling for me as someone who wants to grow. And let's face it, if you get out of that level one and level two leadership to level three, which is production, Now you get to lead by example because you're producing, you're helping your team produce, and you're starting to build morale, you're building momentum, you're setting some standards, and it's a much better place to be. And for a lot of people, at least in my experience, you may have a similar experience. People love to be at level 3 as leaders because they're part of the team.
Yes.
And it can be really attractive to stay there instead of rising to that level 4, which is people development, where ultimately you got to let go of some of the control. And maybe you don't get to feel like one of the guys because you got to sort of step back and empower and equip your people to go out and become leaders in their own right. But when you do that, those people that do advance to that 4th level, they get to see the organization just explode. And what could be more fulfilling? And maybe this is a personal thing because I'm a coach. I don't find there's anything more fulfilling truly than helping another person to become more of who they're meant to be,
Yes.
pouring into someone else. That's the beauty of coaching. And I know you experience this as well. When we get to pour into our clients and help them to step into a higher version of themselves and move closer to their potential. I love when John Maxwell says, God's gift to us is our potential, and our gift to God is realizing that potential.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything more fulfilling. So when a leader can recognize, gosh, it's fun to be in production with my team and be part of the gang, that's really wonderful. But truly, in order for me to be a higher level leader, I've got to help my people become leaders in their own right. And then talk about the ripple effect in the organization. And now, you start to change the world when you're helping other people become leaders. And it can be difficult because you got to be willing to step out of some of that production and make some hard decisions, but you got to build the right team and you got to get the right people in the right seat on the bus. But ultimately, that's the way forward. And I think in organizations, whether they're businesses or churches or government, where you have leaders who are more concerned about developing their people than they are about their own levels of production or those bottom line results, I think you have a very different place. You've got that place nobody ever wants to leave because now your vision is their vision and they carry it on. I forget, I think it was Roosevelt who said, no, that's not true. It's Ken Blanchard who said, what matters is not what your people do when you're there, it's what they do when you're not there. I might have messed up that quote a little bit, but that's kind of the thought, right? You don't have to be there with them.
Yeah.
They're producing and leading on their own. And then, ultimately they're those very few amazing people that make it to level 5 of pinnacle leadership. Well, I think that's something everybody can aspire to, but I tell my clients, if I can just get you out of level 3 to level 4, you're going to have a very different experience.
Yeah.
Right? You don't go from 1 to 5, you move up slowly a little bit at a time. I love doing that work with people, and I know you do too.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically, there are some challenges for leaders because you just mentioned about Ken Blanchard, and so many leaders, or let's say managers, they just manage processes. And because they just manage processes, they don't see limitations. But managing processes only has its limitations. So they just need to grow their leadership ability because leadership has effect of multiplication, as John said.
Right.
I think 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And what Ken Blanchard, he said that none of us as smart as all of us. And this is what some leaders, they don't really realize when they want to move from position to permission level to level number 2, that they think that they are smartest in this room, but they are not. They should
Yeah.
understand that they have people who are smarter than they are, and they should hire the smarter people than them. So this is how they can grow their organizations. And what I like what John said, that 80% of company success is stay in the front door, is who we bring in.
Right. Right. So I love what you said, that Ken Blanchard said. So you said none of us are as smart as all of us.
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Yeah, I
Yes.
love that. Well, don't you find that that's part of the challenge in that level three, if you will, is that the in order for somebody to grow, they have to be willing to relinquish control in a sense, right? And it's they have to be willing to put their ego on the shelf, that think that belief that nobody knows as much as I do, or nobody does it better than I do, kind of thing. And that if I hire people that are smarter than me, I won't look as smart. And that's backwards thinking,
Yeah,
because when you hire people that are smarter than you, it makes you look smarter. Right?
absolutely, absolutely.
It's helping people understand your ego's not going to serve you in this situation, because you're going to look better when you surround yourself with better people.
Absolutely.
Helping people understand that, especially if the reason that they got to this level was because they were a top producer. And I've seen companies make the mistake of taking their top producing salesperson, for example, and then making them the sales manager. So now you have a big problem because your top producing salesperson isn't producing. He or she is now managing the other producers, but they don't know how to impart that wisdom or that it factor, whatever it is that's made them successful, to these other people.
Yeah,
And these other people have looked up to them for so long, they think, wow, I mean, he or she's just awesome, and I could never do that.
yeah,
And so ultimately, the organization suffers because you took your best guy or gal out of production, and you didn't teach them how to lead.
yes,
You
absolutely.
know,
And this
I
is,
wonder if that happens in other organizations. I'm most familiar with sales organizations, so you might have some experience around what that looks like, in your world, in the corporate arena.
yeah. Basically, the same thing I realized that in one big corporations, international corporation, that they wanted to promote their manager to high, high leadership position. And when I talked to one of the executives, and they said that the problem is that we don't have anybody who will replace that person. And I thought, oh, it means that manager, he was insecure. First of all, the mistake was from top, because they just kept that guy for a long time at the same position, and keeping people at the same position for a long, long, long period of time just make people work less, and they just become insecure. They just think that somebody can replace them, and they will empower somebody to do the same job. And was the huge mistake that corporation had. And they said, now we don't know what to do. We want this guy to promote him, but we don't anybody to replace him. So the circle that we need to hire or somebody from outside, but we'd like to have somebody from inside who know our business.
Wow.
There are a
So
lot of,
how do you fix that?
this is another story. Yes,
Right.
but it's a process. You just need to dive into the situation. As John say, you have go into situation in purpose, ask questions in purpose, and lead people in purpose.
Yeah.
And you know that every situation is different, and each person is unique. So when you come to any organization, and every single organization, they have their own culture. So it's impossible to bring culture from other organization and implement it right here, because they have their people.
Right.
Culture is not vision. It's just,
Right.
it's not what we see, and it's what we do. And everybody has vision, great people, really nice people, and they have good values. The problem is that they don't live those values. And this is the
Mm-hmm.
biggest problem that every single organization has, or a big organization, or huge international corporations. So they have this challenge in every single place if they don't live those values. They have what they have. They have culture by default, not by design.
Right, right. So culture, you said, is not what we see, it's what we do. I love that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so when you go, I'm thinking about this particular organization, like the first thing you would have said is you should have called me 5 years ago. I could you know. But so yeah, do you find that in your work? How in your experience, because I'm so curious about this, because you work with bigger organizations, do you what role does culture play if you're going into an organization? How do you tap into that to help guide their leaders?
As I mentioned before, that culture is what we do, it's our behavior. And what we do determines how successful we will become. And then I bring people together. So I just ask leaders to bring everybody in the boardroom and ask everybody, what is our vision? What our values are? Where we are going?
Mhm.
And I tell them, share your vision with others in your team so they clearly understand what your vision is. Have a brainstorming, then reevaluate that information and adapt it accordingly. And what
Right,
is more very important, then ask, how can we do that task other way? Then
right.
reflect on it. And what John says that reflection is a very important element of leadership journey.
Yeah,
A lot of
reflect.
leaders, they don't have their thinking chair. We have to have our thinking chair where we sit and we reflect.
Right, right.
And it's a, yeah, please go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. It's just making me think, Keith Cunningham, who's a great teacher and speaker on the financial aspect, that's kind of his focus of business. He has a great book called The Road Less Stupid. And it is about taking time each week to sit in your thinking chair with a question, maybe two questions. And this particular book I'm referencing has hundreds of questions to help a leader really sit with a blank sheet of paper and their thoughts, and then journal and take notes on that. And I don't know what it's like for you with your clients. With my clients, because they tend to be self-employed or have a small business or a small team, they are so busy doing the work that the thought of taking time to just sit in their thinking chair and think, it feels like I don't have time to do that.
Yeah,
But the truth is, if we don't make the time for it,
yes,
then we're just, we don't really even know, are we headed towards achieving our goals? Are we even going in the right direction?
yes.
So many organizations come up with their vision statement and they put it on a poster, and that's the end of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So many organizations, they do this. But one time, just at the beginning of my coaching career, I had a phone call with John and I asked him, John, how can I just reflect on what you just said and ask about how I help those business owners and organizations to succeed and change their culture. And as John, how can I convince business owners that they have poor leadership? He said, don't do that. I ask why? Because same thing when you tell somebody he's a bad leader. Don't do that. Just ask questions and try to understand what is not going smoothly and what's going wrong in that organization based on answers of the business owner. And this is one part of the game. The second part, the most important part, is he said that we are responsible to them. When we have any client, doesn't matter who, or just individual or small business or big business, people need to understand that we are not responsible for them. We're just
Mhm.
responsible to them.
I love that.
So we just need to get together, to sit together, to discuss about their goals, visions, expectations, dreams, passion, and then create a good game plan. And then together go through that game plan so you can guide them. But they are responsible to make that happen, not you. And when I
Right.
heard that, I said, wow, this is what I should do. So since then, I just see this picture from this perspective. And I approach to business owners from this side. Because before I was trying to teach them right away, it was wrong. It was my mistake. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a natural tendency for those of us that love to teach, that we could just go in and say, look, I have all the answers. I know what your
Yes.
problem is. I'm going to tell you what your problem is, and here's how you fix it.
Yeah.
And of course, as you said, ask those questions so they self-discover what's not working.
Yeah.
And then you help them craft that plan that is specific to them and their vision and their values. And then, that's part of the great part of coaching is you're sort of walking that with them, but they have to go, as the old saying says, they have to pick up the weights and do the work.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful thing. But when it's their idea and they own it and they are responsible, to their team, um, and accountable for their actions, that's where the success comes. Because if not, you have to be there every day, kind of holding their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
But then, once you guide them through that, they're able to go out and do more, which I would presume makes you even more valuable as their coach to the organization. Because if you can help them do that, where else can they plug you in?
Yes.
So, then you become an integral part of that organization.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
that's a great feeling, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also very important what I realized that, and people need to know that if they are not willing to change, if they think that our processes and are too looks too perfect, it means they have leadership problem themselves.
Yeah.
It means they have those people that if those leaders they do not believe in themselves, if they because very often ask, are you sure? Are you trying 100%? Can you do more? Can you try to do more and better? Just and again reflect on what you have done, who you have met, what experience you had with those people or those situations. And again, reflect on it and do it by yourself, with your people together. And when you do that with people, it just inspires you. When you see that people buy into you as their leader, because very often leaders, they just think that why people don't buy into their message? Because they don't buy into them as their leaders.
Right.
This is
They
the
don't
biggest.
buy into the leader, so they don't buy into the vision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is another challenge that businesses have. And like John said also, if you're not willing to try, it's too big of the task. I
Yeah.
can I cannot carry you there on the top.
Yeah.
You
I,
should.
I love I love what you said about can you do more? I was at a workshop once where the leader said, raise your hand as high as you can. Right? Everybody raised their hand. And then he said, now raise it higher. And we went higher. And he said, I thought you raise it as high as you could. So there's always more.
Yeah.
Because I said raise it as high as you can.
Yeah.
And then I said raise it more, and everyone raised their hand more. So most of us, we really do have more to give and more we can do.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
but it's funny when I know in my experience and probably in yours too, sometimes people say I'm doing everything I can. And it's like, are you? I'm guilty of that too, by the way. This is definitely, being a coach has helped me understand, that I'm a product of the product. I mean, I've had a coach since 2003,
Yeah.
so a very long time. And my coach pushes me, every week to do more, because sometimes I will say something to her and she will respond to me and I'll realize I just said something like that to one of my own clients.
Yes.
So I can't coach myself. I need her to help me. So I think we all need somebody in our life who's willing to push us
Yes.
To really step into everything that we're meant to be. And that's a beautiful thing to me.
Yeah. And I just wanted to ask, what would you recommend to our listeners to do in terms of self-development and in terms of leadership? Because us as coaches, we can help them, we just guide them, but this is their responsibility to own it and just walk through the process together with their people. What would your best advice would be to those people who want to change and maybe they are willing to change, but they are not so sure and it holds them back?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I would say this advice was given to me a long time ago. Find a voice. You could go online today and you could listen to hundreds, if not thousands, of speakers at all levels, right? Local to all the way up to the big names that we all know of. And you could listen to a multitude of ideas there. You could go to the library or the bookstore and see thousands of books on personal development. But some of the best advice I ever got was find one voice and tune into that voice and keep that voice as your guiding voice for a period of time, 6 months, 12 months, something like that. So, just block out all the other noise and really just find the person who you resonate with and just follow their advice. Listen to their podcast, read their books, attend their seminars, and really just absorb what it is that they have to teach you. And then find a coach who can guide you along that path because it's so easy to follow. I mean, there's so many different people that would claim to be able to teach you how to become successful or how to grow as a person or a leader or a business owner or a spouse, or a parent. There's so much noise out there. It's easy to get confused. And so there's not that there's one perfect, but maybe there's one perfect for you right now. And really just stay true to that and follow that for a period of time until it starts to sink in, becomes a part of your DNA. And
Yeah.
I think that as we focus on those little steps forward, right? Progress. Progress is what gives us that happiness, that joy, that fulfillment, and that momentum to keep moving forward and to celebrate every little change along the way that we make. And then knowing that you've got somebody. So for me, when I encountered John Maxwell, I think it was back in 2019 when I became part of the team. I just really resonated with John's message because his ideas of success and leadership are so people focused, they're servant focused. And I truly believe that is the secret to happiness is serving other people. And so I've really focused on John's work these last few years. Um, he is kind of the one voice that I'm most interested in absorbing at this point. There have been others. Tony Robbins was my main teacher for many years as well. So I think it's just find someone that you can work with and someone that you can learn from and just move forward and celebrate along the way.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, we have so much to cover from 5 levels of leadership. Unfortunately, we don't have time now for all of the stuff, and I hope that our listeners like all this content. And um, I'm sure maybe in 1 week or 2 weeks, we will have another recording, and listeners will be able to learn about 5 levels and of leadership from you, Angie, because you just told me about voice. I found your voice and I listen your voice on LinkedIn every single day. I see that. So tell us, please, how people can find you.
Well, you mentioned LinkedIn. That's my only social media avenue at this point, and I'm just there at Angi Bell. or my website is angibell.com, and that's spelled ANGIBELL.com. But I love having these conversations so much, Alexander, because I learn so much from you and things that I want to now be able to take back and think more deeply about and bring to my clients. And I think that when coaches begin to work together and collaborate, like we do on the John Maxwell team, uh,
Absolutely.
then we're able to enhance the experience for our clients and we grow personally. And so the ripple effect of that is a beautiful thing. So I'm happy to have more conversations with you whenever that fits into your schedule for sure, because it helps me so much.
Absolutely. But I had so much value from you today, and I'm sure
Well,
that our listeners also. But it was so deep discussion, and we should bring more situations that people will be able to learn from different situations, from different businesses and industries. Because leadership is not about industry, it's not about gender, culture, or age. It's all about people.
that's right. 100%.
So thank you very much, Angie, for being with us.
Thank you, Alexander. Anytime. My pleasure.